My girlfriend said we should just be friends, then walked away with someone wealthier. I didn't argue, chase, or beg. I simply gave her exactly what she wanted before we begin. Don't forget to like and subscribe, it really helps the channel. Today's story is a perfect example of how the most powerful response to betrayal isn't anger, revenge, or desperation, it's growth. Silence and letting time expose the truth. This is the story of a man who was left for someone wealthier, refused to chase or plead, stayed focused on his own path. And watch the entire dynamic reverse 2 years later when success caught up to him. What happened next proves that staying calm and disciplined can completely turn the tables on someone who once decided you weren't enough. When Vanessa said the words, "I think we're better off as friends," and rolled her suitcase toward the door, I didn't raise my voice, I didn't argue, and I didn't ask her to stay. I simply nodded and said, "Okay." Then I watched her walk out. She paused in the doorway for several seconds, a long, uncomfortable silence. It was obvious she was waiting for something, tears. Anger, a dramatic reaction, a last-minute plea. She expected me to chase her, promise change, or break down right there. Instead, I turned back to my laptop like she had just told me she was stepping out to run errands. Fast forward 2 years, my business is now valued in the millions. And Vanessa. She won't stop calling. She shows up at places I frequent. She tells mutual friends that leaving me was the biggest mistake of her life and that she never stopped loving me. The irony is this, after she left, I treated her exactly how she asked to be treated, like a friend. And now that's the one thing she can't stand. But to understand how it reached this point, you have to go back to the beginning. Vanessa and I were together for 3 years. We lived together for the last year and a half in a comfortable 2-bedroom apartment in the city. Nothing extravagant, but solid and stable. At the time, I worked as a digital marketing manager, earning around $78,000 annually. It wasn't flashy money, but it paid the bills and allowed a decent lifestyle. Vanessa worked part-time at a boutique downtown, bringing in maybe $26,000 a year. She talked a lot about enrolling in courses to level up her career, but those plans never really materialized. I drove a 2018 Mazda 6. I covered most of the rent, utilities, groceries, and outings. In the evenings, after my day job, I worked on building a consulting business because I wanted more than just stability. I wanted growth. Vanessa loved upscale brunch spots, designer accessories she'd save for, weekend getaways to wine country. I didn't mind paying for most of it because I believed we were building a future together. The cracks didn't appear all at once. They crept in slowly, disguised as things you convince yourself aren't worth worrying about. She'd come home late from networking events, sometimes close to midnight, carrying the scent of cologne that definitely wasn't mine. When I asked how the events went, she'd get defensive and accuse me of being insecure. She began talking more often about successful men she met, men with luxury cars. Men who invested in themselves, men who lived big. My friend Mark picked up on it early. He warned me more than once, saying things like, "Man, she's keeping you as a backup while she explores her options." I ignored him. I loved her. I assumed love was enough. Meanwhile, I was working nonstop, 12 to 14 hours a day between my job and my side business. And she complained that I wasn't emotionally available, that I worked too much, even though my income funded the very lifestyle she wanted. Then came the night everything finally collapsed. I got home around 8 after finishing a client call. I picked up Thai food on the way because I knew it was her favorite. When I walked in, she was already seated at the kitchen table, hands folded, posture stiff. The room felt rehearsed. Before she said anything, I knew. She opened with, "Lucas, we need to talk." I set the food down and sat across from her. She launched into a carefully prepared explanation, how she'd been doing a lot of soul-searching, how she felt we were headed in different directions. She described me as safe and reliable, but said she needed someone whose ambition matched hers, someone who could give her the lifestyle she deserved without financial stress. Then she said it. "I think we're better as friends." She said it like it was a gift. In that moment, everything clicked. She wasn't leaving because of incompatibility. She was leaving because she'd found someone wealthier, and this was her way of justifying it. I could have argued. I could have promised change. I could have begged. Instead, I said, "Okay. If that's what you want." She froze. Her expression shifted from confidence to confusion, then irritation. This wasn't how the scene was supposed to go. I calmly asked if she needed help packing or if she already had somewhere to stay. She said she'd crash with a friend and come back for her things later. I told her I'd make sure I wasn't home to avoid awkwardness. That's when frustration replaced surprise. She grabbed the suitcase she'd clearly packed ahead of time and left without another word. The apartment fell silent. The Thai food sat untouched on the table, and instead of heartbreak, I felt relief. That same night, I opened a spreadsheet and calculated how much I'd been spending each month supporting her lifestyle. Rent, food, outings, trips, all of it added up to roughly $1,400 a month. Money that would now stay with me. The next morning, I went to work like any other day. Mark called around lunchtime, checking in. When I told him I was fine, he didn't believe me. He kept waiting for the emotional crash. It never came. Instead, I doubled down on my work. Within 2 weeks, I landed my first major consulting contract, a $15,000 project. I realized immediately that I never could have focused enough to close that deal if she were still around demanding attention. Sitting at my desk after signing the contract, it hit me. Losing her might have been the best financial move of my life. She texted a few times early on asking how I was doing, saying she hoped we could stay friends. I replied politely but briefly, the way you respond to an acquaintance. I'm good. Hope you're well, nothing more. That wasn't what she expected either. Mark occasionally showed me her Instagram, photos at upscale restaurants, designer bags. A new man's arm appearing more and more often. I didn't follow her. I didn't check, I didn't care. I was too busy building something real. Then one night, while I was working late on a proposal, Mark sent me a screenshot with the message, "Bro, check out your replacement." It was Vanessa on a rooftop bar, champagne in hand, leaning into a sharply dressed guy. Expensive watch, perfect haircut. The kind of look that announces money without saying a word. The caption talked about finally being treated right. Hashtags about luxury and knowing your worth. I glanced at it, sent Mark a thumbs up, and went back to work. The guy's name was Ethan Brooks. I only knew because mutual acquaintances kept volunteering details I never asked for. 32. Investment banker, BMW M5, luxury high-rise with a doorman. They met at one of those networking events. The timeline suddenly made sense. She didn't leave and then upgrade. She upgraded and then left. Within weeks, her entire online presence transformed. She stopped working at the boutique and became a full-time display of someone else's wealth. Omakase dinners. Designer collections, private car services. Mark summed it up perfectly. She didn't stop using an ATM, she just found one with a higher limit. And he was right. Meanwhile, my consulting business exploded. One client turned into 3. Projects ranged from $8,000 to $12,000 each. I worked relentlessly, but no one complained. My apartment stayed clean. My fridge was stocked. That $1,400 stayed invested in my future. About 3 months later, Vanessa started reaching out again. Quietly at first, late-night texts, nostalgic memories. Remember when messages? I responded the same way every time. Polite, short, emotionally neutral. Then one night at 1 in the morning, she called me from a club, music blaring, voice unsteady. She told me she was out with Ethan, but she was bored. She said she kept thinking about me. I lay there in the dark, listening as she talked about how different everything felt now, and how she missed the simplicity of what we had. When she finally stopped to catch her breath, I calmly told her she should probably get back to her date and that I hoped she enjoyed the rest of her evening. Then I ended the call before she could reply. The next day, when I told Mark about it, he laughed hard. He said she was probably starting to realize that money doesn't magically turn someone into an interesting person, and that Ethan likely bored her out of her mind once the novelty of wealth wore off. But the real turning point didn't come from her. It came around the 6-month mark when my life genuinely shifted. I landed a massive contract with a company that wanted me to take full control of their digital marketing. They paid $80,000 up front, with performance bonuses on top, and even floated the idea of keeping me on retainer for the next year. 2 weeks later, I quit my job. I moved into a much nicer apartment in a better neighborhood, and suddenly I wasn't just quietly grinding anymore. People in my industry actually knew my name. My income nearly tripled overnight. For the first time since the breakup, I wasn't just surviving or trying to prove something to someone who didn't care. I finally felt like I was building the life I had always envisioned. That's when Vanessa started appearing everywhere. It was way too frequent to be accidental. I'd stop by a random coffee shop I'd never visited before, and 10 minutes later she'd walk in acting shocked to see me. I'd attend a networking event and there she'd be, with Ethan, making sure to come over and chat like we were old friends catching up. She'd compliment my watch, my clothes, casually ask about work in a way that clearly felt like she was trying to estimate how well I was doing financially. Ethan, meanwhile, would stand there disengaged, scrolling on his phone, while she kept extending the conversation. I stayed polite but shallow, then found excuses to talk to literally anyone else. Mark started joking that she was tracking my finances like an investment portfolio, and honestly, he wasn't wrong. The most obvious moment came at the gym. Somehow she figured out where I worked out and suddenly had a membership there too, always showing up during the exact time slots I used. She'd end up on the treadmill positioned directly across from the weights I was using, or need the machine right next to mine. Striking up conversations about how wild it was that we kept running into each other. After the third time in a single week, I canceled my membership, joined a gym across town, paid extra, and didn't tell anyone where I'd gone. When Mark asked why, I told him straight, I wasn't interested in being someone's backup plan or curiosity. What really hit me during all of this was how obvious her motives had become. She didn't miss me. She missed the version of me I was turning into, the successful one, the financially stable one, the version that could validate her without her having to rely solely on Ethan. I was supposed to stay exactly where she left me, struggling, safe, convenient, someone she could feel better about abandoning, but instead I actually leveled up, and that wasn't part of her script. Watching me thrive without her bothered her more than the breakup ever did. Here's the pattern people should notice. Those who leave you for shallow reasons almost always resurface when those same surface-level metrics improve. Her constant, coincidental appearances weren't about connection, they were about monitoring value. Then came the morning she showed up at my apartment with a suitcase. Earlier that day, I'd just wrapped a call with investors interested in helping me scale my agency nationwide. We were discussing an $800,000 expansion deal. I opened the door expecting a package, and there she was. Vanessa stood there looking exhausted, smudged makeup, hair pulled into a messy bun. And that same suitcase she'd walked out with 2 years earlier. She didn't ask to come in, she just started talking. Ethan had dumped her. He said she was too demanding, too high maintenance. She told me she'd finally realized leaving me was the biggest mistake of her life. I stayed in the doorway and listened as she delivered what sounded like a carefully rehearsed speech about second chances and how money doesn't equal happiness. What she didn't know, because I'd kept my success off social media, was that I wasn't the same man she left. I wasn't making $78,000 anymore. I wasn't hustling side projects from a modest apartment. I was running an agency projected to hit $3 million in revenue that year. I'd already put a down payment on a house. And I was seeing someone new, Olivia, who ran her own consulting firm and didn't need me to bankroll her lifestyle. But Vanessa was working with outdated information. She spoke like she was doing me a favor by coming back. I was about to end the conversation when my phone rang. It was Mark. I answered it right there while she waited. He was calling about celebrating the investor deal later, loudly mentioning the $800,000 and jokingly asking if I'd bought the Mercedes yet or was still driving the Mazda. I watched Vanessa's expression change in real time. When I hung up, she immediately asked if it was true if my business was really worth that much now. I told her honestly that things were going well. Better than I'd expected, and just like that, everything shifted. She stopped being the remorseful ex and became electric with excitement. She talked about how she'd always believed in me, how she knew I'd succeed, how perfect our timing was now. She touched my arm, leaned closer, said Ethan never understood her the way I did. Claimed money didn't matter to her anymore. I didn't interrupt. I just watched the performance unfold and realized she hadn't grown at all. Money hadn't stopped mattering. She just discovered that I had more of it now. I told her calmly that I appreciated her honesty, but I wasn't interested in revisiting the past. I'd moved on. I was happy, she argued. Said I was being unfair, claimed she'd changed, that she deserved another chance. I pointed out the timing, that she showed up with a suitcase the same day Ethan dumped her. That if she'd truly changed, she wouldn't have waited until I was successful again to reach out. She denied it, raised her voice, insisted it had nothing to do with money. So I asked one simple question. If I were still making $78,000 and driving the Mazda, would you be standing here right now? She couldn't answer. That's when the tears returned, this time sharp and angry. Her voice got loud enough that my neighbor peeked out into the hallway. She accused me of being cruel, of holding grudges, of never really loving her. I stayed calm, told her I was simply honoring what she asked for 2 years ago, to be friends. And friends don't move in together. Friends don't restart broken relationships. She laughed bitterly and said I'd regret this. I told her I'd found real connection with someone who didn't measure my worth by my income. That ended it. She grabbed her suitcase, told me I'd changed for the worse, and left. Mark arrived about 10 minutes later. He told me he'd actually recorded part of the argument from the hallway, just in case she tried to rewrite the story later. Watching it back was surreal, seeing how composed I stayed while she cycled through strategies. 6 months later, my agency crossed $3.2 million in revenue. I moved into my house. Bought a Mercedes E-Class. Olivia and I started planning a Europe trip. Through mutual friends, I heard Vanessa had moved back in with her parents. She was working at a call center, posting vague quotes online about growth and hard lessons. I didn't feel smug. I didn't feel sorry, I just felt thankful she left, thankful I never begged. Thankful that sometimes, the wrong people remove themselves so you can build something better without dead weight holding you back. This story isn't about revenge. It's about realizing your value doesn't disappear just because someone fails to see it. When you focus on building yourself instead of chasing validation, the right people show up naturally and the wrong ones fade into irrelevance. What do you think about this story? Let me know in the comments, drop a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories.